guys. So we're here, and we're looking at my entire editor, and you can see over here we're in a file that's called The Giants of Florida, and there's a bunch of clips in here, comparison drawings of banner. This is our index of the files that we have in here thus far. You can see we're looking at basically three different cameras. I've got one I'm shooting in 150 frames per second, and this is the clips that I shot that with. And so I've loaded those, and I went through the rendering process, and they're now optimized in ProRes 422 4K, right? So I'm analyzing the footage in 4K. Now this particular workstation is on an iMac that can only access or produce within this particular workstation 60 frames per second, but we don't have a choice, so we're loading that 150 frames in here, cutting it down to basically less than half of its resolution, which for me is not okay. So we're working on that, but we also have the iPad files. Those are image files, and then the Osmo, and that's DJI over here. You can see the whole index, you know what I mean? And I have a few compound clips that I've been working with because this is an old timeline. Sometimes I get lazy and don't want to create a new one, but I've loaded all this new footage on here after I basically deleted what I wasn't working on. What you're not working on has no arrows here. If you see arrows next to it, then it's in production on the timeline. If there are none, you can delete them. And so the way that we do that, but we can go through and see, this is my last film that I was working on. And we were going through looking at about 100 different takes of different stuff. And this is the old footage. Imagine we're walking and that's really what you see until we start looking, and playing with the light. But anyway, so this is an example of the workstation. You can see 5994 is what the frames are here, and it's 4K. Everything's optimized. We're in stereo. We're looking at files that were up here. I'm going to this main file now, and I'm here, and I'm gonna look because we're in the Giants of Florida file, the main file now, and we've got, like I said, three different clips. So I've compressed the timeline by highlighting it right here, and you can see I have control over it right here. And if I need to move through, I'll actually keep it right about there. But now we're going to start looking. I've made a couple of notes on key things, like we're on the way in, and I see this bush move right here in front of us. I'm walking in, and right there on the corner, this bush kind of moves a little bit, and I'm like, okay. So what I like to do is kind of like ignore it, and then maybe shoot some kind of an interview when we get up by there. So Melanie shoots an interview for a second, and I start a new clip, and we're going through. Now the iPad footage is back here. So let's see, we're on the trail, we're on the way in, and then boom, Melanie shoots an interview. And now I've got the volumes turned down so that we don't produce an echo, but we're walking and we're on our way in, and you're looking at basically how I'm going to edit this film. I've put the timeline of interviews and Melanie's iPad of the close-up personal interaction on the timeline first. And if I'm going to use that, which a lot of what we do on Crypto Reality is research focused, so story focus is not a part of it. And some people have difficulty with understanding the difference between the importance of the story and the difference of what the story, the importance of what the story is actually about, and being able to photograph it, right, and bring all this evidence in. There's quite a bit more value in that. Those stories are awesome. They're also just entertainment, and that's how we all got in this mess. You listen to too many stories, right? I listened to too many stories my whole life. We all listened to too many stories and lost track of what's really important. So here we are, not losing track of what's really important, and we're doing our jobs, and we're filming, and we're hitting our key spots, and we're also along the way making note of any activity that we see. But Melanie is filming also, so we always look at her footage, and the way we do that is we zoom in on it. And as you can see, if I click on this, this menu over here, whatever's highlighted here, will appear on this menu. So if I go here, it's going to change to that image. But my presets are all the same because I haven't adjusted. So I want to look over here and see what's over here. So I'm gonna bring that up a little bit, and you can see I'm just using the exposure. I can highlight saturation if I want, and I get this menu, or color, and I can move that. But this is what I'm primarily using here, because we just need to lighten up and add a little depth, because their faces have a tendency, with the reaction caused by the sun, to remove it all. So that's what we're doing. We're putting depth back into the examination and giving ourselves a chance to review more data. And this is critically important, right? So loading on the timeline is real easy. You can just drag it in from the outside and drop it anywhere you want. You can drop it on top, you can drop it in it, and if you just hold it there, I'm holding it, my finger's down on the mouse, I'm holding it. Now I let it go, and what we have is banner. Well, an angled shot. If I don't like it, I can come over here, drop this menu down, and the very top one, which you can't see, says undo add, and banner's gone. Now I want to look in that corner over there and see what we got. And it looks like there's possibly a humanoid here, man. Maybe a couple. So what we're going to do is we're going to first, this is our clip, and it's rendering all the way because we made these changes over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to stretch it out. First things first, we're going to come over here and we're going to stretch this out until we see these lines right about there. We want about 1/8 of an inch in between each one. Now we can drag this timeline around, but first we want to wait until it renders so that it doesn't get blurry when we work with it. How do we know when it's done? This is a process line, right? And it lets you know that what you're working on is still being rendered. Now, if you come back over here and you make it smaller again, you can see where it's actually at in its process, and watch the line actually disappear. Watch how it gets eaten. That's being rendered. And this is a render window here. It's a wheel, a progress wheel, and it lets you know by highlighting how much progress it's made on whatever it is that you've decided to edit. Very simple process. If you click on it, it brings up a menu and it tells you exactly what's going on. It's rendering and it's at 34%. You can pause that activity, or you can even delete it or stop it from that activity completely. If you were to stop that activity and you can do something and then you wanted to redo it, there's a menu for you to start it back up and re-render it with the new changes. For now, we're leaving it like this. So it's almost done, but we can see that it's done where we're working at. And we've also, I think we've got an individual here. The eyes seem to be flashing, and there's something going on here as well. So let's see if we can, this guy's slick. The colors are blending with him, man. You can see we've got all kinds of stuff going on here. So let's zoom out a little bit more on this. Yeah. We got movement like crazy. Big face here. It looks like there's a couple of them here lined up watching us. Let's do a little more to this and see if we can't. It looks like the bridge of a nose and a couple of eyes, and could this be a head? I don't know. Is it two of them? One, and this one's in the front, and then there's another one. I don't know. But boy, there's some definite movement there. You can see, and that's what the light flickering across their faces looks like when they move a little bit. And it could be 4 or 5 small ones in there, man. You know, I mean, until we get a good frame. And we're going frame by frame, and I'm just dragging this cursor so that I can initiate an examination of frames. I'm going through this, and I want to try to find a decent frame. Oh, wait a minute. Accidents happen, and we've got a perfect face here. So now we know this appears to be a smaller creature. Well, not really smaller. Let's take a look at how big he is. He could be enormous, but smaller than the enormous giants we're looking at. So yeah, this thing's pretty big. But that's basically what we do to find our Bigfoot. Now, these are situational shots. What does that mean? We've studied this area in the topography, and we've already made note of where the individuals hide. So here Melanie is, and here I am, stopping where we've seen things before, and we're shooting. And as I'm talking, Melanie drifts off to the left with the camera and films the appropriate zone that we've examined in past expedition footage. What did she just catch? What does that look like to you? So here we are, demonstrating in real time the entire process, over and over and over and over. It's very simple. The difficult part for people seems to be understanding that the creatures are there and that all they have to do is understand how to get the light out of the way. If the light's not there, and their eyes can pick up on the subtle color variations of the creatures, because basically, let's look at what that creature looks like by resetting the parameters. How many of you are saying, oh, there's a Bigfoot in there, let me refit it? How about none? And this is an appropriate distance, and that's like exactly what it looks like. You see it dark, and there's nothing you can do about it. But upon closer examination, we've determined by filtering certain light spectrums out and putting certain darker tones back in that there's an individual watching us. And we can lighten that up a lot if we want. Getting it to where it's a little bit closer to natural. So this is what I try to look for, because typically this is what I see when I see one in the trees. What does all this represent? The species requires diffusion to stay off human vision and attention. The creatures exist in diffused light. In the forest, there is lots of diffused light. Behind or under the shady side, what we see as the shady side of any tree is diffused light. Shade is diffusion. They hide in it. We see it as a plain, darker, version of reality. But the reality of that shade is it's the color of whatever it's passing through or bouncing off of. In this case, it happens to be a pine tree. And the pine tree is perfect cover, and specifically because of the diffusion that it provides. The creature's achromatic skin accepts and retransmits the diffused light, and you're standing there and all you see is what you think is a shadow, with the exception of his little one that's up front, because he's inexperienced and doesn't understand that he has to be on the shady side. And so the bigger one is probably going, psst, get back here, psst, get back here. He's out front. And you can see his achromatic skin. That's a little one. But he's goofy. He hasn't learned yet. He has to be on this side, down in here, so that the diffusion gets on his face. He's still out front a little bit. He's got a lot to learn. Anyway, this is the workstation. You just witnessed how we do it, real time. We've examined this. Now guess where I'm going to make sure we film the next time we're standing in this exact spot. And it's very easy to ascertain where that spot is. We can see it. I know what this is. It's a landmark. Do you see these trees? Gee. So that's it. And now that we've done 6 or 7 different examinations in this habitat, both Melanie and I are extremely familiar with how to catch these creatures on film in this particular habitat now. So the files on each one of these creatures will continue, because what we've noticed is that the creatures will hang out near the same areas over and over. So we may catch this guy right here over in this area the next time we go in. And when we zoom in, who knows? Maybe it'll be a better shot this time because we're more focused. We actually know there's a chance he could be sitting there.